Hey, I'm Stephen J.B. Davis. Thanks for tuning into the Land and Home Show. I am talking all about mindset and process of buying real estate. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Stephen J.B. Davis, your land specialist, residential realtor here in Central Kentucky and beyond. And today we're just talking about two pretty basic ideas of mindset when you're going into buying real estate, as well as a pretty basic process in going into the purchase of real estate. And so starting with mindset, I wanted to talk about two basic ideas. One is understanding what a realtor's job is. Not everything, because there are lots of things like any job, but just the basic understanding of what their role is. And you can boil that down to one sentence, which is to represent the interests of their client. That's it. If you unpack that a little bit, what that means is realtors have a fiduciary or a legal responsibility to the people that they represent. That's why they call them clients. Clients are different than customers. You walk into Target, the person there is getting paid hourly, or maybe if they're a manager, they're getting paid a salary in order to make sure that the customers are happy, right? They're going to get paid either way. They also have no legal obligation to you or anything like that, other than making sure, their credit card machines don't get hacked or something like that. Realtors are different. Realtors have a legal responsibility to keep your pertinent details confidential. They have a legal responsibility to make sure that they do the best that they can from a fiduciary standpoint. So, they're not going to go and say, oh, hey, listing agent, they actually will pay more for this house. They're not going to do that. That would be a violation of their fiduciary responsibility. The other important part of that sentence I said, the representing the interests of their clients, is that word client. I think a lot of times these days, especially since a lot of real estate starts online, people, they see a property they like, whether it's land, whether it's a home, whether it's land with a home on it, they get really excited. And they call someone that they see a picture of next to that piece of property, and their expectation is they're going to go see it, they're going to go maybe see more stuff, they're going to get that offer in, all that kind of stuff, and they've essentially skipped over a whole lot of steps and the reality of the idea that they're not a client yet. Realtors owe these fiduciary responsibilities and some of these practical actions to people that have entered into a business relationship with them. There's only so much a realtor can do and will do for people who aren't clients yet. They may be willing to talk about general process of buying real estate, like pre-approval and figuring out what it is someone wants, whatever. But when it comes down to performing specific actions that get you into a home or onto a farm and stuff, those are things that realtors owe to their clients. And so if you're not a client yet, then there's a limit. And there are ways to get to clienthood or client status, but that involves, a conversation, being willing to talk about the things that are important to you in service, also talking about things like budget, talking about things like how you'll finance, and we'll get to that. So you can get to the client status, of course, right? That's how deals are done. But what you can get out of a realtor before you become that client is going to be limited, like any other profession. A lawyer's not going to represent you on trial when you're not their client. That's just not how that works, right? And there's no difference. There's no difference as far as fiduciary responsibility, as far as legal responsibility, when I compare those two things. Obviously, there are plenty of other differences. The second thing that I think is important in mindset is just being willing to accept that there are things that you don't know. Nobody in their profession knows everything, but it is probably smart that if you have decided to work with a realtor because of whatever their merits are, whatever it is you like about them, they're doing the job every day. So there are inevitably going to be things that they know and people that they know that ultimately will help you, that you should be aware could influence your decisions. And to that end, I sometimes run into folks who are less receptive to information that really is for their benefit. And it could be about the market, it could be about a particular house, it could be about how their loan is relative to, say, a geographical area, like a USDA loan, for instance, is only going to apply to certain areas in any state in the United States of America. And so you may like a house here, but it doesn't qualify for rural status or something like that. There's going to be plenty of things. And so it's not that you know nothing and your realtor knows everything, but it is your job. It is your realtor's job. Going back to the first point of what is the basic job of a realtor, it is their job to inform you about stuff and to fill in the gaps of your knowledge so that when you do make a decision, you're not in a position where you're like, oh, I didn't know that. Why didn't you tell me? So being receptive to the idea that there may just be things that you don't know. And when you receive that information, not taking it from a place of a realtor trying to, I don't know, control a narrative or condescend you or something like that. It's just them doing their job. So then when we talk about process, process can be boiled down into three basic ideas, and in this order. First is ability, second is readiness, third is willingness. When all three of these things are married up and they all exist, then you have the prime recipe to make something happen. That something being the winning offer and ultimately closing on a real estate deal. So ability, how do you define that? Ability is how you're going to pay. People hate starting here, and I get it. Like, talking about money can be uncomfortable. Talking about money can be rude depending on the culture or the context. But this is not a realtor asking you about money on the street and walking up to you while you're trying to enjoy ice cream or hot chocolate. This is all in relationship to what can we help you find and ultimately purchase. And without a clear-cut definition of that, it makes things very, very nebulous, very big, very inefficient, very frustrating ultimately, because you may be running around looking at a bunch of stuff that you can't necessarily make happen. And meanwhile, you could have been focusing your sights on something else that's a lot more realistic from a financial standpoint. So ability is the first step. And what does that look like? That looks like pre-approval or proof of funds. Pre-approvals are super important. Sometimes they're pre-qualifications, but they're super important if you're borrowing money, because you can look at every mortgage calculator on the planet, but it doesn't ultimately tell you what your financial scenario looks like when you're at the closing table, as well as when you're paying your mortgage every month. I have some family members that I don't think will mind me telling this story. They at this moment, they rent a place in a very high dollar home market. They're high earners, they have great credit scores, and they were interested in buying a house. And so I said, okay, well, you should go ahead and talk to some bankers and all that kind of stuff. And they're thinking, okay, hey, we can afford this much, and this is kind of what our personal limit is, which turned out to be true. What they found out later, after speaking with someone and going through that pre-qualification process, was that their closing costs were going to be astronomical. And closing costs are not something that you generally borrow more money for in order to cover. They're costs that you pay out of your own pocket. Like, it's coming out of some liquid money, a checking account, a 401, well, maybe not a 401k, but a checking account, some type of savings account. Maybe in the market 5 years ago, maybe it's coming out partially from the proceeds of the seller. But at the end of the day, they decided maybe buying a house at this moment is not great for us, because we want to be able to have some cushion in our own like liquid finances, things for repairing cars, things for dogs, things for if there were some other type of emergency. If we were to pay all of these closing costs, which, I mean, they were ridiculous when I looked through their scenario, it was a lot of money. We weren't talking about $3,000 or $15,000. It was a lot of money that would have depleted them of the majority of their savings, on top of having to come to the table with a down payment. So that pre-qualification process informed them about the process overall. It really adds color, and a useful color, to how you will then carry on in the rest of your real estate process, and in the purchasing process, I should say. The second thing is, if you're not buying with any sort of lending or something like that, it's the proof of funds. I don't need to see your banking statement. Nobody really needs to see it. If you have the money, it's really just a matter of asking some VP of a bank branch, like, hey, this is the house that I like. I just need someone from this institution to say, based on Mr. Doe's or Mrs. Doe's financials here at this institution, they have money in excess or to meet the cost of yada, yada, yada. That'll do it. It's not about being in your business or valuing you as a person, judging you as a person based on the amount of money in your bank account, but it is about, well, what can we realistically make happen? We don't do real estate much anymore in like handshakes and smiles. You got to put it on paper, because at the end of the day, it is a very competitive market, and no one's looking at your offer saying, well, I sure do hope they have the money. No, they are about to take their place off the market for umpteen days or weeks for you to get an inspection, to do all of these things, with the understanding that you absolutely financially can get to the finish line. They don't want you to get in line at the Target and then call your bank and hold up all these other people behind you to be like, I need to check my bank balance. That's not how that works. It's too big of a financial decision for both sides. And it's too competitive for you as a buyer to think, well, here's this offer. I'm not really interested in letting you know if I can or can't afford this, but this is what I'm offering. That's not really the way that the world works. Willingness. Nope, I'm skipping ahead. Readiness. Readiness is all about circumstance. What is your motivation for buying a place? Not necessarily emotional, but it could be emotional. But just what is it that's going to allow you to move? For some folks, they've got the money to do it. They know exactly what they want, which I'll get to, but they actually want to wait a year and a half until their kids have moved out for college, or until they get their parent situated in assisted living, or they need to sell their place first so that they can buy the next place. That's readiness. What is the timing? What's the motivation? What are your life circumstances that make you ready today, that if you found that place right now, you'd be able to move forward? Okay? And then lastly is willingness. Willingness is really defined by what it is you want. That's location, that's price, that's the characteristics of a home or a piece of land. What is it that will say, yes, if I had the money today and everything was right in my life circumstances, and I saw this thing that has A, B, and C, I would do it. That's what willingness is. Willingness is, what does that property look like? How much does it cost? What does it feel like? What is it you're looking for? And so when your ability, your readiness, and your willingness are all there, then it's a matter of whatever a seller has to say, right? Like, you can't make someone take your offer, but now you've controlled the variables that you can control. You know that you're coming into battle with all of the armor and the weapons that you may need, but now you've got to find an opponent. You've got to find what that right thing is. You've got to find the right price. You've got to do all of those things. But without those three things in place, and without that proper mindset, you're not really ready to engage any of the rest of the process in any sort of practical way. And so that's pretty much it. If you've got more questions about that, you're looking for advice about, how to get ready, or maybe how to have the ability, maybe your credit score is not great and you need to borrow money, like most people, in order to purchase a home or purchase land. Like, how do you get there? It's a realtor's job to connect you to those folks. It's not you don't have these things, can't talk to you. That's not how that works. It's just that the fun, exciting parts are not always the parts that we get to skip to when everything else is not in place. You've got to be prepared. And so I'm happy to help you become prepared. I'm happy to answer questions about other professionals that you may be connected to in order to get prepared. But you really you've got to have that mindset ready, and you've got to be able, ready, and willing from the physical real estate side in order to really pursue real estate seriously. That's all I've got for you today. It's very cold here. I'm clearly staying warm, being very, very cozy. We've got like a citywide snow day here in Lexington. But I decided to come on here and leave you with those thoughts. So leave me your comments, your questions, reach out to me. My info is in the description there. And I'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.